You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, check out chrisblair.com. Hey everybody, here's another episode of Stories Behind the Songs. I'm your host, Chris Blair, and thank you so much for listening. Today we are going to sit down with my buddy, Jet Harvey. We're going to talk about how Jet started out as a Christian artist and how he became a mumble interpreter, which led him into songwriting. How his Christian band got a label deal, but they broke up at the label signing. Literally sitting at the table, signing a deal, the band broke up. But because of that, we'll talk about how that got him even more into songwriting and ultimately to Nashville. We're going to talk about how his very first scheduled co-write in Nashville, he talked about how he walked out on his girlfriend, who is now his wife, during a fight that they had on a trip to Boston, and how he told his co-writers that he talked about seeing tears rolling down her face as he walked out the door, and the full story behind the #1 hit, Rock in a Hard Place, that he wrote with Heath Warren and Jacob Hackworth for Bailey Zimmerman. We're going to talk about how he introduced himself to Brett Warren of the Warren Brothers while he was soaking wet in a YMCA, and that led him to meet Ben Vaughn at Warner Chappell and get his first pub deal. I love this dude so much. He's got a great heart, great stories. Can't wait for you to hear this episode. Let's get to it. Here's my buddy, Jet Harvey. Hey guys, this is Chris Blair with another episode of Stories Behind the Songs, and I'm here on Music Row at Warner Chappell with Jet Harvey today. Jet, how you doing, brother?
What's up, Chris? How are you?
Good, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sitting down, and we pulled you out of a write. I hope you wrote a good song as well goes.
Almost there.
Almost there, yeah. Well, man, so obviously this is all about the stories behind the songs.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to get to your latest hit. That's pretty exciting. But before we get there, just walk me through, like, how did you get to Nashville? How did you get into songwriting in the first place?
Yeah. When I was right out of high school, I got accepted to a junior college for baseball. I got hired at Walt Disney through like a show choir camp thing, and then I got accepted to Berkeley in Boston for vocals. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna go to Disney. And so that was my initial music, like beyond anything school related.
Yeah.
And I'd never really written. And then after that, I grew up in a Christian home, pretty kind of strict, and they were like, you know, we're only gonna support you if you do Christian music or whatever. So naturally, I went into Christian music. And being in a band, it's just kind of what you did. Mm-hmm. Like, I never thought of songwriting as the job. Entertaining was the job, or singing was the job. Songwriting was just a part of what you did to get you where you needed to be. Yeah, to the stage. So I never looked at it like as the career. I looked at it as like, okay, well, this is what we got to do as a band because no one else is going to write our songs. So where are we at? How do we feel? And, you know, you would hear your guitar player on a sound check or something with a riff, and you're like, oh, I love that. And you just immediately just kind of start writing it. It was one of those things, like, I never consciously thought about, I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. It was literally just no different than driving the van or setting up the merch table, or it was just a part of the gig. Yeah. And so that's how I got into it back when I was like 19 or 20.
And where was this? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up outside of Memphis, a little town outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and then moved around a little bit. My mom got remarried, and she moved us to Southern Illinois. And the minute I graduated high school, I left and started traveling and doing everything. Yeah. And I met this band in Oklahoma City, actually. I'd wound up from Florida to Oklahoma City, and that's where I met the two guys in that very first band years ago.
Wow. Yeah. So how long did you do that with Christian music?
With Christian music, it was 8 months really hard. And and they were incredible musicians. And that's another thing, like, I played drums and bass and guitar, and so melody was always a big thing to me. Mm-hmm. And they would just have these riffs, and it's like, honest to God, like, I would hear riffs, but I would hear words in the riff. Like, I would hear words in the melody, and I was just like, whoa, it sounded like he just played these words. And that's how I started writing. Like, and I tell people even today, like in writes, I'm like, I'm a mumble interpreter. Like, if you mumble, and it's in a melody, I'll hear something,
Yeah.
and it's just really weird. And so that's how we started writing, and we would spend hours. Like, we rehearsed for like 5 hours.
Man.
Yeah, we just played and played and played and worked it out and worked it out. But then when we went live, man, it went so fast. And we
Band's
had
tight.
everybody
in
so
the,
tight, and we had all these little record deals in Christian music, and we broke up at a label signing.
Did you really?
And it broke my heart.
How does that happen?
Oh my God.
Man?
We were in Memphis, Tennessee at Ardent Records, and we had won this band tournament. We played for 5 months, 40 bands, 5 months.
Yeah.
And we won. And so we went on this little Christian tour, played all these festivals, and we got a deal, and we broke up at the label. We'd been there for a week and a half, and this guy named Skid Mills had produced this, and he produced like all the rock bands, like Led Zeppelin, ZZ Top.
Yeah.
It was a dream of mine to be back in Memphis at this label. It was perfect, man.
Yeah.
And so we broke up at the conference table, like signing, and it was over, and it broke my heart. And like for 2 years, I just hid away.
Dude.
And then that's, honest to God, that's when I started writing like independently. Like a couple of my friends were getting married, and like, hey, could you write us a wedding song? And I'm like, I can try. Like, sure.
Yeah.
And I sat down at the piano, didn't really play the piano, but I can. And I sat down at it, and boom, I wrote a couple of wedding songs, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And and then one thing led to another. I moved to Nashville in 2000 with kind of the same record that were making at the label.
Mm-hmm.
And got a job at Dillard's at the mall and was just swinging, and it's funny because I met who is the guy? He sings what is the song? And Keith Anderson. What are some of his songs?
Yeah.
Keith Anderson was like a squirt and flirt model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he
used to play listening room a ton back in the day.
Keith Anderson. And so, man, and so I was trying to think of some of his songs they sang. Picking Wildflowers, that was one of them.
Yeah.
And he was working, like selling cologne or something, and I was working in the Nautica section. And he's the one that was like, well, I'm a songwriter. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, for yourself? Like, what do you write? And he goes, well, I write for everybody. I'm like, what? And he was at the time like training Martina McBride or something. I was like, oh, well, do you write? He goes, oh no, I would never, cross the lines or whatever. But so he invited me out one night to see him and I think it was like Jeffrey Steele and like some other guys at the venue here in town. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, what are these guys doing? And all these songs that I didn't hear, and like artists were gonna sing it. And I started learning about that whole side of the business.
Yeah.
But even still, I was like, I think I want to do the artist route, But yeah, that was my introduction into music, and then that's what eventually led me to Nashville, like in 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then when you got here in 2000, were you still continuing to pursue the artist thing? When did you switch over to still?
So yeah, I pursued the artist thing all the way up until about last year.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to get to it, but like.
And sometimes you don't know when it happens, man. It still could happen. I mean,
I don't know. Honest to God, like I don't know anything anymore.
Yeah.
The miracle of this song, and I mean, it's so conventional. It's just like there's nobody that's moving to town that's having meetings with people at labels or BMI or ASCAP or whatever. No one is gonna tell them this is the way you do it. It'll be the one-off story, like it's something about like just being open with your craft and your abilities and allowing your gifts to make room for you. And not like, for me, this is gonna sound crazy, but like for me, I was like just putting myself in a box being an artist, and being an artist sounds like the biggest dream in the world. Like, well, I'm gonna stand on a stage and be this 1%er. That really sounds like the dream, but honestly, it was kind of a box, because in my mind, I was like, I'm only gonna do this or I'm not gonna do anything. And I never thought about, producing or writing or being a producer and a writer and an artist. And I knew people that were, but I was just like, man, my brain is so I was really confident in the one thing that I did well, and that's just what I just wanted people to know about me, like most of us, right? We only want you to know the best part of us, but I didn't realize that writing, I was good at it, and I enjoy it, and I have fun with it, and all of the new people I'm meeting in town, it's just, they're great, and I would have never known them otherwise, and I'm really thankful. You know, as we go and talk, I'm going to say a lot of things, but I want to be very clear. I'm very thankful, and every morning I'm like, thank you so much for allowing a window to open, because I'm like kicking down a door, and this window opens over here. It's just like, well, this is how we're gonna do it, and I'm just so thankful. That song, you know, I sat on it for 3 weeks, on deciding on, because Bailey and Austin heard it on one of our Instagrams. Heath Warren is one of the guys I wrote it with. Yeah, heard it on Heath's Instagram, and contacted Heath about it, and Heath was like, I think that's Jet's song, but let me see, you know, and I had to really like deal with it for a minute. And then obviously, I mean, Bailey's TikTok numbers and everything made sense. It was just ego. I was just like, gosh dang, man, like I thought this was gonna be, you know, and then they made that song bigger than I even thought it was gonna. I mean, I still don't really realize or understand like the gravity.
I mean, it's still so fresh. And for everybody listening out there, we're talking about Rockin' a Hard Place. Yeah, Bailey Zimmerman.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you were sitting on it and holding it for yourself, and then
I just, you know, it's just what you do. Like you go right. So like I had a social media guy, and he was like, and I was frustrated with numbers because I want everything better, and I was like, Alan, like, come on, man. He goes, honestly, you're good. And I'm good, but we need better songs. And I was like, well, thank you for being honest. Like, there's the first guy that really just shot me straight on this thing. Instead of just being like, oh, well, just keep doing what you're doing. Just write more songs. That's not an answer. Right. Like, nobody can do anything with that answer, because I've already written 1,000. So if 1,000's not good, how is the 1,001 going to be the kicker, you know? So he was like, so I said, well, then do you know who can help me write a better song? Because at the end of the day, it's really all I care about. Yeah. I mean, I want to be the salesman of the song. I want to be the singer of it. But ultimately, if my name's on it, I want it to be the very best. And so who can help me write a better song? And that's when he was like, you know, you really need to meet this guy that I know, Heath Warren. And I'm like, all right. And so I met him, had a couple of cancellations, you know, as it would go. And then the third one that we scheduled stuck, and that's when I met Jacob. Yeah, and everything changed. Yeah,
both great writers, by the way.
They are. I had no idea. I mean, you know,
I love that dude.
Heath is really talented, and I know we might be jumping ahead of the order here, but we'll talk about that. Right, we'll talk about. You might have questions about how that ride actually went.
Yeah, so I do want to go into that room.
So we'll save it. We'll back up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you get here? How did you get the publishing deal at Warner Chappell?
Yeah. So, that when that song really started blowing and going, like really, and that's another thing. Like I really thought about, well, now what? Like, now what do you do? Like, because honestly, it's not like my phone was ringing off the hook, and it's not like I was getting DM'd by every publisher in town. Yeah, it's a pretty slow. Well, I mean, it's very slow. It's a very slow process, and no one gets excited. No one gets in a rush. And honestly, I just felt like, I mean, no one cares. Like, I mean, how big of a song do you have to write for anybody to care? And man, and I'll say this: like, Clay Bradley has been the most instrumental person in getting me from point A to point B, and getting me with other writers and putting me with other people. And Clay was one of the first guys. And even then, like, I mean, I'll just shoot you straight on how it goes. But like, even then, I had to call my buddy at BMI who works in accounting to be like, yo, like, can I get a meeting with anybody? Like, what's going on? Like, what has to happen for people to want to talk to you? And I was just like super frustrated, man. Like, I'm a business guy. I own other businesses. I have an insurance business that I own. And like, I've ran car dealerships in Nashville. And like, when it's time to make money, you go make money. You do something. You put it in play.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like anyone's putting anything in play. And then also with just the amount of streams that this song has and the internet, and a lot of people are still not confident in how that works or how it pays out, and like on the business side of it, they're like, we don't know, and so everybody was just kind of wanting to wait. Like, well, let's just wait and see what happens, and let's just wait. Well, if it gets played on the radio, then it's got to chart. Well, if it charts, then it's got to be number one. If it makes number one, how long is it going to be number one?
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, you're going to have a bajillion streams and get $30. And I'm like, that's not true.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I'm not listening to all that. And so Clay, I had lunch with Clay, and he's like, you need to meet this guy, this guy, this guy. And the difference is that Clay pulled out his phone right then and did it. And instead of going, I'll connect you, 4 weeks later, there's no email, and then I got to follow up for 2 years.
Yep.
And he just pulled out his phone. I was like, boom, 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 boom. And I was like, I can work with that guy.
Yeah.
That's where it started. Then, like, rando, like, just, I'm serious, like, at the Rack Room shoe store in Cool Springs Mall, my wife has had foot surgery, and she had twice has been on a scooter, like one of those knee scooters. Yeah. And we're at Rack Room Shoes in the Cool Springs Mall. She's off her scooter, but like now she has like a heart for scooters, you know, for people. And we saw this guy on a scooter. And so I'm over here looking at shoes, and I look up, and Kristen's just over there just yapping it up with this guy on a scooter. What happened? Tell me your story, blah, blah, blah. And so he's the nicest guy in the world. So he's just talking, and it's Brett Warren.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so, and I was like, man, that guy looks familiar. Cause when I lived in Los Angeles, when I moved to Nashville in 2000, I lived here for about 2 years. Lots of things started happening again. I'm like, okay, here we go. Round two. I got a second shot at it. And we were on the radio here on 102.9 The Buzz, and we're just blowing up. And so I started flying out to LA once a month to do rights and work with producers. And well, you get out there, things change. You know, Avril Lavigne needs to make a record, so you get pushed to the side or whatever. Yeah. And so they were like, man, you really need to live here. And I'm like, I don't want to live in LA. But I did for like 5 years. And I was like, I'm out. I'm moving back to Nashville. Yeah. But I remember when I was in Los Angeles, I always watched CMT. Yeah. Like, it was funny because like I would do rock, but I loved CMT. And like You Ought to Know was on there, and I would start seeing VH1 You Ought to Know and all these stuff. Dierks Bentley was big back, like his one record had come out, and I just loved it, like Modern Day Drifter, I think it was, and I was just listening to it all the time. I was like, man, I love this sound. But I'm making a rock record, but but one of the things is on CMT was the Warren Brothers TV show.
Yeah.
Like Barely Famous.
Yeah, when they're out like with Tim and like, yeah.
Like, these guys are the craziest like idiots. I love these guys.
I texted him last week at your show at the listening room.
He told me.
Yeah, you were playing that song, and I videoed part of it, and I texted him. I was like, "Come on, bro,
that is
what a good
awesome."
song." So,
yeah, that was the first time we wrote together. So anyway, I loved those guys then, but I couldn't tell you one song. I mean, Red Solo Cup, obviously, I figured that out, but like, I had no idea that they were such a force. And I just remember them being literally the funniest guys I've ever seen. And I just want to hang out with them. So when I saw her talking to him, I was like, man, that looks like Brett Warren. So I Googled it, and I was like, sure enough, that's him. Well, I didn't go talk to him that day because Rock in a Hard Place hadn't really done anything yet. And I was like, what am I going to do? Tell this guy that I have a 1987 Silver Eagle with my name and Screwball Whiskey's name on it, and we're trying to go to do show. I mean, like, who isn't like trying to do stuff? But I did have a bus, and I had an endorsement, and Screwball Whiskey, they still endorse me. So shout out to Screwball. But it was just like, I don't have anything to tell him. Like, I'm just like, everything, like, what's he gonna say? Oh, great, whatever. So I waited. I didn't say a word and let it go. And I was like, Lord, you can make it come back around if this is what you want. Just make. And so we're at the Y in Franklin. We live in Franklin. We're at the Y at the end of Rolling Oaks and Mac Hatcher or whatever. And I'm working out with Kristen one morning, and I look over, and Brett Warren again is right beside me. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say something. So I tried to break the ice, and I was like, hey man, you need help? You need a spot or something? He goes, nah, dude, I got it, thanks. And he kind of blew me off. So I was like, well, I don't have a comeback on that. Like, I don't know how to get back into this conversation, you know.
Yeah.
By this time, Rockin' a Hard Place is really scooting. Like it's launched and it's really rolling. And so I didn't say anything the rest of the day. We got in the truck and my wife was like, did you talk to Brett? And I'm like, I mean, I tried, but like, she goes, so he doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know what song you wrote. And I'm like, he doesn't. She goes, and we're driving in circles around the parking lot because I'm just not wanting to leave the parking lot because I know what I need to do. And we'd made 3 laps. And she goes, I swear to God, if you don't get out of this truck right now, go talk to him, I will, because he knows me.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
he does know you. And so I stopped the truck. And the sun is out. Stop the truck. Sun's out. It's a nice, warm, beautiful day. I open the door. I step out of the truck. Pours rain. Like somebody just dumped a bucket right on me.
My gosh.
My clothes are soaking wet. And I'm like, well, great. Now he's going to know that I was outside and came back in like a total idiot. And so I walked in the thing and I said, hey, dude, I need to introduce myself to you. Like, I don't know. I don't want to like be weird or nothing, but my wife said she was going to come in here if I did. And he started laughing. And I was like, man, I want you to know I'm a songwriter. I briefly met my wife at Rack Room and we laughed about it. He goes, oh yeah, what song did you write? And I said, I wrote this song called Rockin' a Hard Place. And he hit me on my shoulder. He's like, we were just listening to that song this morning. It's my wife's favorite song. And he goes, the minute I heard that song, I knew that nobody in Nashville wrote that song. And then he hit me again. He goes, and that was my favorite part. And he was just so cool about everything.
Yeah.
And he is like, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I think it's cool that it's taken off the way it is. It's totally unorthodox. He was, out of everything that everyone else has told me about all the rules, he was the first one that was like, I think it's awesome. You want to meet at whatever and get a smoothie or whatever? And I was like, sure. And so I went out to the truck and he's like, here, take my number. So we exchanged numbers, and, 3 days later I met him at this smoothie place, and my, Kristen was like, see, told you. And I'm like, wow, that's, you've been knocking on doors for so long and you're trying to meet with everybody. And honestly, the most resistance that I had in talking to him was just because I didn't want to hear one more person who had made it tell me how hard it is, how you don't make any money, and like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, dude, it is hard, but you made it. There is money because you made it. There's opportunities because you have them. All I want is a chance, Yep. And that's one of the things I talked to Brett about. And I was like, he's like, well, what do you want? And I showed him my bus, and I was like, man, I got this thing. I got it. I got the band. I got everything you need, except, I gave my best song away to it, which was a great decision to make. And I don't regret it at all. But I was like, I just don't really know what my next steps are. And he goes, let me talk to my brother. And I was like, okay. And he talked to a couple other people. And this whole time, while this is happening, Clay has hooked me up with like Eclipse Music, and then Major Bob. And so I'm writing with other pub companies, and they call it courting, where you kind of go write and they see how you fit with their people and whatever. And so I'm doing that, and it's all cool. It's all positive. Like, it's all good. And then the Warren brothers got with Ben Vaughn here at Warner Chappell, and they were just like, yeah, we love this dude. We want you to meet him. And I had read up on Ben, and one of the things I read about Ben, because Ben's like a fan of music. And that's another thing. I was meeting a lot of guys and ladies in the industry that, like, I swear to God, I met this one vice president of a record label that didn't even have a radio in his office. And I'm like, well, how are we going to listen to music? Like, well, I'll just listen to it in my car later. And I'm like, man, you're not excited about this. Like, I'm here. Like, I want to go. Like, what are we doing? And one thing I loved that I read about Ben Vaughn, and normally I don't read up on people. Like, I don't want to be distracted by their greatness or intimidated by it.
Sure,
I just want to, I want to get to know them right now and just like be in the moment with them. Well, one thing I read about Ben Vaughn that I loved is when he was like on a lower level, and he was running around just like literally peddling songs. He would like, I remember this article talking about how he would had a cassette tape and he was looking for Garth's truck all over town, and he put the cassette tape like in his windshield wiper blade. Like that's how they used to pitch songs, like just hungry. And I'm like, man, he's a fan. He's not afraid to find a truck and put a cassette tape on a windshield wiper. Like, I like that dude. And then I met him and we literally just talked for 2 hours in the meeting. He didn't listen to one song. He asked me about myself. We laughed because the Warren brothers were there too. And so we're like 3 brothers. I feel I'm like their 3rd adopted brother or something. But like we just laughed the whole time. Ben's laughing. And then boom, he was like, so, this is kind of like our offer. And I was like, well, I don't want any money. I don't want to take any advance or nothing like that. He goes, well, if you don't want money, what do you want? And I said, I want opportunity. I've always just wanted an opportunity. And like for the first time in my life, and I hope I don't cry, but like for the first time in my life, I felt like finally someone got me and wanted to get behind me and make a way for me. And like, man, I've never felt like that, even like with parents and stuff. Like, my dad, he's been gone since 2000. He left the family when I was 4. My mom was just trying to hold it together and figure it out. And here I come with like tattoos and hair and earrings. And she's like, what is going on? Like, I don't really, and for the first time in my life, I just was set. I was just like, I got in my truck and I was just like, finally somebody is willing to take a chance, and I'm telling you, man, like, and that just happened. I signed my pub deal a week before Christmas last year. Yeah. And it was just like, I mean, I didn't even care about, the biggest deal to me was just that 3 men in a room who believed in me and were willing to take a chance. And like, I mean, it just like, I still get super emotional about it.
I can see that.
Yeah. It's like, and I'll cry. It's like, and I will cry. So I have to be careful, but I just, to have, like, I'm not alone anymore. Yeah. And I've been alone my whole life pushing for this, or not even for this. I was trying to go in a different direction, and just, I'm so thankful, man. Like, I'm so thankful. I got to see them today. They were down in room 1 and I was in room 7, and
Brett and Brad were?
Brad and Brett were, and I hugged them, and
that's awesome.
And they were so proud. They're like my brothers, but they're like, hey, Chris sent us that video, man. It was awesome. We're so proud of you. And like, they weren't even there. They didn't have anything to do with it. It was like my own thing that I worked out with Zach, and it was just awesome, man. I was just so thankful. And hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love it. This episode is brought to you by Sennheiser microphones. When we first started this podcast, we were using some older microphones, and Sennheiser came in and sponsored us and gave us some MK4s and 914s. And I mean, I'm telling you, it's made all of the difference in the world. We love these microphones. We use them at the listening room as well. And I just can't say enough great things about them. Go check out Sennheiser.com. If you are into music in any way, their microphones are hands down the best on the planet. Go check them out, Sennheiser.com. And thank you, Sennheiser, for the support and the sponsorship. We love y'all. Well, let's transition and jump to Rock and Hard Place. Let's dive into how that write happened.
Yeah.
Take me into that room.
So I need to back up out of the room first so the room makes sense, because the room is actually very short.
Got it.
It was magic. But right before the room, I brought up Kristen, and she's my wife. But at the time we were dating, and we honestly, we met. I was slow to move because I was just in the middle of something and at the end of a divorce, honestly, and I just wasn't ready to move forward on anything. And I didn't know her. I just wasn't ready yet. And so we met. I was like, look, I'm way older than you think. I got 3 kids and just divorced. Like, I'm not what you're looking for here. You need to move on. And she was like, you're exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And I was like, then I don't know if I want you. Then I don't know if you're what I'm looking for. No. Yeah. But it's like, that was the first miracle. Also, one of the first people in my whole life that saw me. I was very honest and ugly and transparent. And she was like, love it. And my first line of acceptance, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, huh. So what I was willing to do was text. I would text, we would DM, whatever. We visited. Fast forward, 6 months later, we finally start dating. A few months later, so now we're about a year in, we're dating officially. And I'm like, man, she's literally like my best friend. And she was like, hey, she's from Boston. She was like, hey, do you want to go to Boston with us and meet the family and stuff like that? I was like, oh, buddy. And she's like, we'll go to a Red Sox game. I'm like, I'm in. So we went to a Red Sox game. It was awesome. And so we had a huge fight in Boston. And I can't even tell you what it's about, and she can't either. In fact, I have a selfie still on my phone where we're in the Uber and we're like, we're smiling, and like from the car to the receptionist stand, I'm lit, like, and I don't know what happened, but I got fired up about something, and we went and sat down and we ordered the wine. She drinks white wine, I drink red, and they brought us some like calamari or something, and the line in the song, red wine and mistakes, tears rolling down your face as I walked out the door. That's exactly what happened. They set the wine down, got the calamari. I didn't even take a sip. I just was like, I'm out. I just stood up and left, and I walked out the door. And I remember I'm paying the waitress, and I look back, and she's not looking back. I can see her through the mirror. She's crying, and I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, I'm such a jerk. And I stood outside the restaurant forever, just trying to figure out, like, what is going on? Anyway, I finally get back to the hotel. She's already beat me there, and she's like packing, and I just sit there like I'm totally like non-emotional. Like I just don't have it in me. I don't have the capacity to deal with this intensity of a relationship yet. And finally we all just settled down, and we're just sitting there. And long story short, finish the weekend. I don't fly at home early. We finish it, but it's real touchy. It's real like we're both sad. We're both like, oh, I don't know if it's gonna work. The whole time she's been encouraging me. She knows this right's coming up. We're talking, but not really. Fly back home. Boom. Now we're back in Nashville. So that's what happened. We had a fight in Boston, and that's what we say in the lyric. That's when I lost at midnight in Boston. Yeah, is how we originally wrote the song. Bro. And on Heath did the work tape, and I still have it. And when he sings it, that's when I lost at midnight in Boston. And it might even be on his Instagram. I don't know if we changed it yet or not. But when we got back to Nashville, we kind of went our own separate ways, Kristen and I. And a couple days later, that write was scheduled to happen. It was on June 2nd, 2021. Is when we met for that write.
And that was the first time you wrote with either one of them, right?
It was my first organized Nashville write ever. Yeah. I'd never made an appointment to write a song. Yeah. I'd never even heard it. I didn't even know that was what you do. It sounds silly actually if you say it out loud. But for a creative person to be like, at 11, it's just weird. Yeah. And so I pulled up, Heath, I call Heath. I'm like, hey, man, I'm here. He's like, hey, buddy, my friend Jacob is hungover, and he spent the night on the couch. He's going to write with us, so he's great. You're going to love him. We'll bring him in as a third. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, as a third what? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, sure, man, whatever. And they come down the stairs, and they're just hungover. And they're like, hey, before we go right, man, there's this little place right down we're going to get some breakfast burritos. And I am tore up. Now I am furious. I'm like, 1 second.
This is funny because I know Heath so well, and I'm like,
right,
I can see him.
We're
gonna go get burritos.
Yeah, we're gonna get some burritos. Like, and he lived in Germantown, whatever this little place was down the way. And he goes, we're just gonna get some breakfast burritos. And I'm like, I'm here to write, man. Like, I'm here to work. And so I'm so alpha. I'm so type A, and it's like. And for a creative to be that way, it's weird. Yeah. And it's hard for me sometimes too. And so I'm like, 1 second, I call Kristen, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I honestly, and I said this the other night at the listening room, I was like, there's a 70-30 chance she wasn't going to answer. 70% not in my favor. But she answered. And I'm like, well, I can't believe she answered. But I was like, hey. She goes, what are you doing? She goes, you're right. I mean, she knew what day it was. She knew what time it was. She goes, you're right? I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I was like, but... like, man, these clowns, like, they're hungover. They want to go eat breakfast burritos. I'm like, I hate songwriters. Like, this is so stupid. And I'm like, nobody works in this town. Like, that's exactly what I said. She goes, well, here's the deal. Number one, I have a meeting I have to go to. I have a real job. And she goes, so I got to cut this short. She goes, number two, you've already wiped off your day. So if you leave, you don't have anything else to do today. Number three, you love breakfast burritos. And I'm like, I do love a good burrito. So I was like, all right, thanks. She goes, now go write a song. Go write something good. Because she had always been encouraging me this over that year of us dating. Like, also, like, hey, I know you want to be an artist, but I just think you're just putting yourself in such a tiny, like, you're limiting the way other people can see you. Because since she had gotten to know me, she knew that I wasn't like this bad rocker, tough guy. You know, I'm 6'4", 250 and tatted up. Everybody immediately is like, oh, and I am tough if I need to be, but most of the time I'm really nice and I'm cool and I'm emotional. I'm Italian and I'm a creative. And so it's like, she's like, no one knows that about you. You need to be a songwriter so people can know this side of you, and you don't have to sing every song. That's the great part about it. Like, you can write it and a chick can sing it, or a pop guy can sing it, or a country. Like, you can spread your wings out in all of these genres that you've been in the past. You've been a Christian artist, you've been a rock artist. Now you're trying to be a country artist. Like, you can still be all those things, but you get to be you. And you get to be home. She was like planning for the future, you know?
Yeah.
And so she had been encouraging me in this whole year that we were dating. Fight, get to the right. I'm like, all right, fine. So I'm like, let's go eat breakfast burritos. Well, that's the part I didn't know that songwriters like to do. It's like coffee shop time. It's like, just get to talk, get to know each other. Heath and Jacob knew who I was from playing at Tin Roof on Demumbrium. I had a residency there. Every Friday night I would play there. And they would always come out, and I knew their faces, but I didn't know that that's who they were.
Yeah.
But they knew who I was, and they knew that I could sing, and we all thought we were writing for me, the artist, that day. And so we had breakfast burritos. We started cutting up and talking, and I was like, oh, this is a cool thing. Okay, this is good. I see what we're doing here. Got back to the Heath had like a little townhouse kind of thing, and we sat down and I just kind of took over because I don't know how rights go, and I'm that guy usually. So I was like, hey, so there's one thing I'm writing about today, and it's just the only thing on my mind. And they're like, what is it? And I'm like, well, we got in a fight. Kristen and I got in a really bad argument. I still don't know if we're going to make it. And I was like, the problem is she's my best friend. That's the problem. Because like I'm at the point now where I'm either gonna like give her a ring or I'm gonna punt her. Like I'm either just gonna I'm gonna give her the rock, or I'm really gonna have to break up with her, and it's such a hard place to be in. And I kind of said all of it, and I was like, it's like just between a rock and a hard place, but a rock being the ring, and the hard place of breaking up with her, which that whole second verse is exactly what that. And so Jacob was kind of tinking around on like the A minor, C, F, and just kind of, or maybe I brought it. I can't even remember. It just starts happening. And I just, like, being a Christian and growing up in church, I have a tendency to kind of go back to just letting God be in the room and letting the Spirit kind of move through you. And that's that's how I write. That's how I create. I'm just like God's the creator of music, not just Christian music. Like, he is the creator of lyrics, not just Christian lyrics. Like, you can say other things, and you can have a bad day, and you can be frail, and you can be human, and that's what we're supposed to be. So I just have this thing where I try to I always say flow first, fix later. And like I just let it flow and get the template and the ideas, and then we fix it. But what I'm finding, for me anyway, is if I get in a room with some dudes that don't interrupt, or if I see that you're flowing and I don't interrupt, like, it happens. It just happens. And like the next thing I know, it's on paper, and we're tweaking words instead of trying to come up with lines.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And that's what happened that day. I started just talking and telling them the story basically that I told you. Like, I mean, they set the wine down. I got up, walked out, tears rolling down her face, walked out. And Heath's first words out of his mouth were, because Heath was kind of going through something in a relationship. It's just different. It's just something different, but he could relate.
Yeah.
And Heath's first words were, "We've been swinging and missing. It ain't broke yet, And he kind of paused, and I think Jacob probably went, but damn, it needs fixing. And then I was like, it's been a while since you, and it just, boom, and here we go. And then Heath was like, but that's same. But you can, and I shave my arm so you can feel, but like, it was just like, we've been talking about forever since we've been together, something about a ring. I mean, it just, bum, 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 bum. Oh, and then Rock in a Hard Place, Red Wine and Mistakes, tears rolling down your face as I walk, like just literally what happened. And then we kind of just stopped, and like, you really can feel it. But like, then we just stopped, and I always say that, I'm surprised I haven't said it now, but like, I'm like, for the record, I always say that. And I was just like, you know, for the record, like, breaking up with her would be harder than staying with her. Like, I would rather, it would be harder to break up with her than it would be to just work it out. And here goes the wordsmiths, you know, they're just good. Like, for the record, throwing in the towel would take some effort. So I'd rather ride it out for better weather. And I remember I'd rather ride it out for better weather. And I remember us just sitting there and Jacob going, together. And he was like, well, that's the second verse. And like, we were just, it was done. It was like, I mean, faster than we could think. It just, whew, and it's like everything led to that 40 minutes. And that, I mean 40 minutes of walking up the stairs, getting the guitars out. No one rebutted the idea. Nobody did the old switch the line. Like, I mean, nobody interrupted anything. And that was my first experience. Wow. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is pretty cool. So we left that day, and I called Chris and I go, well, I have a song. And she goes, I can't wait to hear it. And she about lost it, like in an angry. She's like, I can't believe you wrote about that after all this stuff. Like, you could write about anything. And I'm like, but that's the one thing. And that's who I am. Like, but that is the one thing. Yeah. That's on my mind. And she was like, but you say Boston and now everyone's gonna know. Like, her family. I'm like, well, I didn't say her name, and no one, I don't even know if we're gonna be dating tomorrow. So no one's ever gonna know it's about you. Like, calm down, you know. But she was just so.
Now they will.
Yeah, now they will. But and she's okay with it now.
Yeah.
And she's okay with it because, like, also in her life, being transparent never really got her anywhere. And we're all learning that when you surround yourself with the right people and you are transparent and you let people see you and then they love you, like, that's a whole different way to live. And that's kind of where we're at now. It's just like, we're in this place, like, we're surrounded by great people, but we've created those boundaries. And that's another thing. Like, it really started changing in my music career when I stopped, and I'm just going to say it, but like, when I made my gift worth more than whatever that is, worth more than tips, worth more than, like, for me personally, I hated the whole singing in clubs for 4 hours. I hated it. I know a lot of people that love it, and I know a lot of people, like, they're living their dream. So I'm not degrading it by any means. It takes a lot to do that every night, sometimes 2-3 shows a day, 3, 4, 5 shows a week. Like, I don't know how they do it, and God bless them, because I could barely do it. And I did it for 6 years. Yeah. I just trying to figure out trying to make my sound, and it was the way to keep a band and practice. Yep. And I get it, but like, holy night, man. Like, but the minute I was like, man, I don't care if I never do this again, I'm not doing X. And the minute that I started doing that, no matter what, no matter what I do with music, I'm not doing that. And then no matter what, I'm not going to be around people like that. No matter what, I'm not going to be a person like this. Like, the minute I started getting myself in a line with what's going on, like Rick Rubin says it best, the universe is always creating. You can either choose to be in it or not. Either way, it is. It's so, like, there's just some undeniables in life. Yeah. There's just some undeniables. And if you can sit around and dance around them, or you can sit around and be a part of it, because it is going to be going along long before you got here and long after you leave. So you can either do the dance or not do the dance. Doesn't matter. But I just had to get myself out of the way. And Kristen tells me that all the time. If you would just get out of your way, you would be so successful. She says it all the time. And I'm learning, though. But she's right. Like, my ego, and that's to get to the song that I wrote with the Warren brothers. It was our first write, and it's called All Downhill From Here, but it was just a song about ego check.
Yeah.
And they were the same way. They got in there. They didn't say a word because they're brothers. They've been doing it forever. They didn't say a word. They just started playing and humming and singing. And I just started, like, he said a line, I said a line. It was just like this magic. And you live for that. Like, that's the cool thing that I wish, and I might even start doing this now, but I might start recording these sessions because it's just like that stuff people never, you can't feel it, but you can't even see it. You never know. Like, you just, I appreciate you doing these like stories behind the songs because the story is my favorite part. Like, I wish people would have like spy cams on tour buses and like the backstage. I don't care what a show looks like. I know what a show looks like.
Yeah.
What did you do all the way there? You know, like what did you have for dinner? Like what were the jokes at the table? Like I want to know the details.
It brings you close and personal. It's like, the things that you don't get to see all the time.
Yeah. That make it great.
Yeah.
Like it's great. We know that's why we pay to go see it. What made it great? And how can I use that in my life? And how can I, can I take from something and learn from something and then can I hand it off to someone else, like mentor, being mentored kind of thing. So hopefully I didn't get off the track there too much, but that's taking you into that writer's room with Heath and Jacob. The one thing I will say, like, and I think I did say this already, but like, no one threw out any other ideas. No one offered any. No one got in the way. Like, and we didn't beat the song to death for 3 days after. Yeah, it was like that's it. We recorded the work tape, and within 15 minutes of Heath posting it on his Instagram. Like I posted it on mine, 50 or 60 people like it, whatever. He did the same thing, 50 or 60 people like it, whatever. But the one guy who did like it was Austin Sean. And they were sitting in their studio. And it's another thing about just everything lining up. Like they're working, they're frustrated. We're working, we're frustrated. We're all looking. They were in their studio looking like, man, we need a song. Scrolling through Instagram, just trying to find it somewhere. He knows Heath. Oh, let's see what Heath wrote today. He's a good writer in town. And that's another thing that I want to speak to Heath and Jacob about and give them some credit. While I had been getting my street cred playing and singing and doing shows, they had massive street cred in the writers' circles, and they've been doing listening room. I mean, golly, I don't even know, you've known those guys forever. Yeah. But they were working the whole time. They were waiting also, and I think that's very important. Instead of whining in the waiting, they were working in the waiting. I was working in the waiting, and Bailey and Austin working, but they're waiting, and they got dreams and they got things. And then they just saw that song, and Austin texted Heath immediately. Was like, I gotta have that song. And then Heath was like, man, I don't know. I think that's Jet's song. They had already sang it at the listening room a couple times, introducing it as my song. And like, hey, don't worry, everybody, they made it. They're here tonight, but it's a song about, but it's not about a breakup or a get together. It's just about the place in the middle. And I think that's why so many people relate. And when we wrote that, I didn't know, I never thought about anyone relating to it. I never thought about me singing it and more than 2,000 people knowing about it. Like, I never thought about the way that we wrote it in like a nursery rhyme kind of sound. That little, like, I have a 7-year-old daughter she teaches it to all of her friends at school. Like, all of her little first grader friends love that song. But they just like the da 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 da. It's just melodic. But nobody thought about any of that. We just let it. It just happened, and that's really like that writer's room. Like, that's what it was. It was just 3 dudes allowing something to happen bigger than themselves, and not getting in the way and not questioning it and just letting it come out, man. Like, it was a great experience. It really was.
Man, I love that.
Yeah.
Such a great story. Thank you.
Such a long sharing
story. No, it's those are the good things though, man. It's like, there's other songs that I've sat down with people and, and they're still great stories, right? Sure. But it's like, oh yeah, like this was going on, and this happened. Yeah. There's not like the beef of that, of like being in Boston, having that fight, like walking out, like, I mean, it brings that song to another level, and I can't wait for everybody to hear this episode, because a song that they love so much already, now they're gonna love even more, because because they can relate even closer to it.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
It's funny, like when all the TikTok things started happening with Bailey, and I'm so thankful for Bailey because he also had been putting in all this work. And it doesn't seem like nobody takes social media serious, but it's very serious. It's a lot of work, and it seems like a quick rise for Bailey, but there was a lot of work, and he had a fan base that I didn't have, and he had people listening to him that I didn't have. Like, and thank God for him. I'm so thankful. But I knew the song was gonna be big when people started breaking down the second verse, and they were like, "Guys, y'all are missing it. Like this second verse." Like when they were really paying attention, I was like, "Oh man, I think this is gonna be a 20-year song, like a lifelong song for people." And I hope it is, and I hope it encourages people to stick in there or cut it, man. Because if you're dying on the vine, cut it. But if you need to stick it out and be the bigger person, and where I needed to be, like, just own it, and move on, and hopefully you're with a person that loves you unconditionally. But anyway, that's when I knew the song was gonna be bananas, is when people started really dissecting it. So I can't wait for the dissectors to hear the really stripped down. Right, it'll be sick. Yeah,
awesome. Well, man, thank you so much for sitting down with me and sharing that. I can't wait to have a part 2 at some point down the road, and like just keep talking about what you and Warren Brothers do together and everything else. But before we wrap up, I always like to end with the same question. So knowing what you know now and being in the room and just getting this pub deal and all that and everything kind of happening.
Yeah.
If you go back to 8-year-old Jet, what advice do you give yourself today?
Honest to God, the advice that I would give myself, I know where I was when I was 8, so that's funny that you said that. My advice to Jet at that age would be like, don't listen to anybody except you're right. That would be my advice. You're right. You're right. No one, like, don't be distracted. Even if your mom doesn't get it, or don't impress anybody, like, just do what you know to do because you're right. That's the advice that I would give him. Now you're going to make me cry. But I spent so many years, man, like, we're only going to support you if you play Christian music. Well, I was a Christian, so like, what does it matter? I'm going to play music anyway. Might as well play Christian music. But that's not, and that door opened, but it also quickly shut. And you can be who you are wherever you are. Like, it doesn't matter. And so, but that's the advice I would give myself. And even in the mornings when I wake up, I still give myself, like, hey, you're right. You know what you're doing. And I don't mean you're right like you know everything. I mean, that internal deep gut feeling that that fire's never going to go out until you die. You're right.
Follow it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
At all, like, follow it. And, it's okay to, everybody's like, don't have plan B. Like, have a plan B. Like, don't be lazy. Like, don't be poor. If you can make money, go make money. But follow your dream. Like, go do it. You're right. Even when people don't get you, don't be discouraged. Just don't let the business get in the way, because half of that doesn't even know what's going on. They're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's fine. I'm not mad about it, but like I was for a long time, but it's because my heart wasn't right. But like, man, if I could tell that kid anything, is like, hang in there, buddy. You're right. Like, you're gonna be fine.
I love it.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much.
I appreciate you, man. I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Yeah.
I've watched other podcasts and I've watched these shows, and I'm just like, oh man, that'd be so cool to get to do.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thanks for this being your first one.
Heck yeah, man. Anytime.
All right. Well, this is Chris Blair with another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Jet Harvey, writer of Rockin' a Hard Place for Bailey Zimmerman. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. This has been an episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information after the show, head over to chrisblair.com. That's where you can find information on these episodes, trailer notes, video links, all kinds of great stuff. Also, make sure to leave us a great rating on iTunes, like and follow us on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. I really hope that you think this show is awesome, and we really appreciate the love and support. I promise to keep gathering great content and continuing to sit down with more amazing songwriters and artists as we grow. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for the support. We'll see you next time.